Hey, CALIBRATE, a few years back when we talked about this conference and the purposes behind it, one of the things we landed on is we wanted to talk about character. We want to develop character in worship leaders. And so one of the things that I do in developing character in my life is I like to focus on different virtues and making those a reality in my life. And one of those I want to talk to you about today is the virtue of patience. Having patience in your life. I think if you can develop patience, everything else kind of falls into place. You know, I came on staff at Compass 10 years ago, and I still remember when I walked into our worship center the very first time, God gave me a vision for what He wanted in that room of lighting and video and sound, a way to create a space where His presence could be made known. The problem was that there were 32 trees on stage, 32 of them, ficus trees, fake trees that surrounded all of the band and all of the equipment on stage. The trees were not a part of my vision, and so I just thought, how am I gonna get rid of all these trees? And I went to one of our pastors on staff and I said, hey, what's the story behind all the trees? And he said, oh, aren't they beautiful? This prominent family in our church just donated those trees to the church just a couple months ago. And so my dreams were crushed, and I began to ask God, how do I move forward in the midst of the jungle on my stage at Compass? So I began to pray about it, and a few weeks later we changed our series over, and so I moved a few things on stage, and I took 2 of the trees backstage and I put them in a closet, and nobody said anything. So 6 weeks later, we changed the stage a little more for a different series, and I took 2 more trees and I put them in the closet. And I continued this process over and over and over. Fast forward 2 years, I had 2 trees left on stage, one on each side of the stage. And our lead pastor came to me and he said, Caleb, why are there trees on the stage? Get rid of those things. So I took my final 2 trees and I put them in the closet, and they have not been back ever since. Now, I could have settled in and just said, you know what, we're not a tree church, and got rid of them all at one time. But there would have been some people upset with me. It wouldn't have been worth it. What I found was having patience and coming up with a plan to make changes so that the vision God put in my heart was the best way to go at it. You know, sometimes what God puts on our heart and when that happens are 2 different things. Now, Abraham was promised that his descendants would be more than the stars in the sky. But it was 25 years from the time he was told that would happen to the time that he had one child to begin that promise, 25 years. David was anointed king when he was a teenager. It was over 20 years until he actually became king. Jesus, the Son of God, was born, and he lived 30 years before he began his ministry. We're not talking months or weeks. We're talking years and years and years of patience before God did incredible things in people's lives. So I want to encourage you today to have some patience. Be willing to wait and trust in God. And I promise you, if you develop patience in your life, everything else will begin to fall into place. Thanks a lot.